There's another one. This is the one about an ash grove, and in this one, the ash grove is half dead. The ash grove. Half of the grove stood dead, and those that yet lived made little more than the dead ones made of shade. If they led to a house long before, they had seen it fall. But they welcomed me. I was glad without cause, and delayed. Scarce 100 paces under the trees was the interval, paces each sweeter than sweetest miles. But nothing at all, not even the spirits of memory and fear with restless wing, could climb down in to molest me over the wall that I passed through at either end without noticing. And now an ash grove far from these hills can bring the same tranquility in which I wander a ghost with a ghostly gladness, as if I heard a girl sing the song of the ash grove, soft as love uncrossed. And then in a crowd or in a distance it was lost. But the moment unveiled something unwilling to die, and I had what most I desired, without search or desert or cost. Now, I'm going to read a poem just simply because Rick told me he liked it. This is a poem about this was in upstate New York, and looking at the evergreens it must have been spring, because you could see when the wind blew, the clouds of pollen would come off of it in enormous golden waves. It was kind of dark, but you could kind of sense that it was that goldy green color of pollen. And that was before I had sinus problems. I thought it was more beautiful then than I might now. But this is a poem that comes to that, and it's called The Persistence of Nature in Our Lives. You find them in the darker woods occasionally, those swollen lumps of fungus, twisted, moist, and yellow. But when they show up on the lawn, it's like they've tracked me home. In spring, the persistence of nature in our lives rises from below, drifts from above. The pollen settles on my skin and waits for me to bloom, trying to work green magic on my flesh. They're indiscriminate, these furs. They'll mate with anything. A great green-yellow cloud of pollen sifts across the house. The waste of it leaves nothing out, not even men. The golden storm descends. Wind lifts it from the branches, lofts it in descending arcs of need and search, a grainy yellow haze that settles over everything, as if it's all the same. I love the utter waste of pollen, a scum of it on every pond and puddle. It rides the ripples, and when they dry, remains a line of yellow dust, zigzagging in the shape of waves. One night, perhaps a little drunk, I stretched out on the porch, watching the Milky Way. At dawn, I woke to find a man shape on the hardwood floor, outlined in pollen, a sharp, spread-eagle figure drawn there like the body at a murder scene. Except for that spot, the whole damn house glittered green gold. I wandered out across the lawn, my bare feet damp with dew, the wet ground soft, forgiving beneath my step. I understood I am, as much as anyone, the golden beast who staggers home in June beneath the yearning trees. have you ever seen that moment where a tree is packed with birds and they all take off at the same time, and for a moment they have the shape of the tree? You know, they when they kind of fill the what would you call that part of the tree where all the leaves are? Wouldn't that be? I thought a canopy had to be more than one tree. No? Okay. And believe me, I trust you more than me on that. And they all leave it at once. So the tree is here, and the birds, since they've all left at the same time, have some of the same shape of that tree to it. And it's like a shadow, except it already has a shadow. The shadow's down here. And this one is rising up off of it. It's an interesting thing to see, and I was thinking about it, and anyway, came to this poem, in this case called The Chinaberry. Chinaberry is kind of a trashy tree. You agree with that? They have all those berries, and they come and they kind of kill the ground underneath it, and they leave a lot of rotting fruit. You get a bunch of nasty grackles all over the place. Nope. It's a southern tree. Y'all must not have it. I have a poem that I'm not going to read because it gets into racial issues. But Elizabeth Eudora Welty, in one of her letters, points out that it's considered a trashy tree, and that you would see them in the black part of town in the south, and the white people would cut them out of their yards because it would kind of spring up when the birds would crack the seeds out. I guess. Is that right? So you know, there's trees part of racial issues. But anyway, here's a very different kind of a poem, The Chinaberry Tree. I couldn't stand still watching them forever, but when I moved, the grackles covering each branch and twig sprang together into flight, and for a moment in midair they held the tree's shape, the black tree peeling from the green, as if they were its shadow or its soul, before they scattered, circled, and reformed as grackles heading south for winter grain fields. Oh, it was just a chinaberry tree. The birds were simply grackles, a miracle made from this world and where I stood in it. But you can't know how long I stood there watching, and you can't know how desperate I'd become, advancing each step on the feet of my advancing shadow, how bitter and afraid I was, marching step after step with the underworld, my ominous, indistinct and mirror image darkening with extreme and antic nothings, the ground I walked on, in exact reversals, elongated and foreshortened parodies of each foot luring itself onto its shadow. And you can't know how I had tried to force the moment, make it happen before it happened. Not necessarily this, though this is what I saw. Blackbirds deserting the tree they had becoming for a moment in midair, the chinaberry's shadow for a moment after they had ceased to be the chinaberry, then scattering, meaning after meaning, birds strewn across the morning like flung gravel, until they found themselves again as grackles, found each other, found south, and headed there, while I stood before the green, abandoned tree. Now, I think I'm going to end with Robert Frost Birches. Now, is that a cliche? Does everybody read that who comes here?
I don't think you can hear it.
birches. When I see birches bend to left and right, across the line of straighter, darker trees, I like to think some boys have been swinging them, but swinging doesn't bend them down to stay. Ice storms do that. Often, you must have seen them loaded with ice a sunny winter morning after a rain. They click upon themselves as the breeze rises and turn many-colored, as the air cracks and crazes their enamel. Now, do you all know what crazes means? I know you know. I'm talking to these people, the youngsters. Well, youngsters, what does crazes mean? It doesn't, in this case, mean making somebody crazy. You know, when you see enamel or something that's really old, it has little cracks in it. Like wood will do this, and you know what I'm talking about? That's called crazing. And what he's talking about here is on the trees, when the ice forms on the twigs of the trees, and they move a little bit, it gets all those little cracks through it. Crazing. I've now expanded your vocabulary exactly one word. Did you know it already? There you go. Now you're grateful, aren't you? You're going to use this all the time. Ice crazes. What else crazes?
Glaze on pottery.
Oh, yes, I should have thought of that first. You're absolutely right. That crackle you can see on signed pottery is very sought after too. Okay, now so we've got the ice doing that on the trees. Soon the sun's warmth makes them shed crystal shells, shattering and avalanching on the snow crust. Such heaps of broken glass to sweep away. You'd think the inner dome of heaven had fallen. They were dragged to the withered bracken by the load, and they seemed not to break, though once they were bowed so low for so long, they never right themselves. You may see their trunks arching in the woods years afterwards, trailing their leaves on the ground, like girls on hands and knees that throw their hair before them over their head to dry in the sun. But I was going to say, when truth broke in, with all her matter of fact about the ice storm, I should prefer to have some boy bend them as he went out and in to fetch the cows. Some boy too far from town to learn baseball, whose only play was what he found himself, summer or winter, and could play alone. One by one, he subdued his father's trees by riding them down over and over again until he took the stiffness out of them, and not one but hung limp, not one was left for him to conquer. He learned all there was to learn about not launching out too soon, and so not carrying the tree away clear to the ground. He always kept his poise to the top branches, climbing carefully with the same pains you use to fill a cup up to the brim and even above the brim. Then he flung outward, feet first, with a swish, kicking his way down through the air to the ground. So was I once myself a swinger of birches, and so I dream of going back to be. It's when I weary of considerations, and life is too much like a pathless wood where your face burns and tickles with the cobwebs broken across it, and one eye is weeping from a twig's having lashed across it open. I'd like to get away from earth a while, and then come back to it and begin over. May no fate willfully misunderstand me, and half grant what I wish, and snatch me away not to return. Earth's the right place for love. I don't know where it's likely to go better. I'd like to go by climbing a birch tree and climb black branches up a snow-white trunk toward heaven, till the tree could bear no more, but dipped its top and set me down again. That would be good both going and coming back, one could do worse than be a swinger of birches. And that's Robert Frost. Thank you all.